We were there on a whirlwind 10-day trip. It was London, it was Davos, St. Moritz. We were in Milan for an hour and 15 minutes and got robbed. So lost my computer, presentations. The friend of mine I was with lost diplomatic passports and crypto keys and all sorts of things. So a lot of my presentations that I've done the last 8 or 9 months weren't in Dropbox. And anyway, so customer acquisition to me is interesting. I don't normally do this topic. I usually do either vision and values, which is the first one, which I love doing, but I don't because then I'm penalized because nobody knows what the rest of the speakers are going to be like. So I always tell Adeo I want a presentation bonus. Or we used to do one on hiring and firing. So I've done a lot of different ones, but customer acquisition for me is fairly easy. And here's why. I've done 11 companies, I think. I don't remember. So at some point I'll give you guys my information. You can look me up. But every company I've started there, they've always been my own ideas. And 5 of them were the first one in the world to ever do something. And sometimes that sounds exciting. A lot of times it's extremely challenging because you're trying to convince people to join you in something that they've either never seen or don't understand or don't think will work. And out of those 3, it's usually the latter. Right? And when I say I've done companies that nobody in the world's done before, I'll give you an example, and this is going to start to date myself so my stories get older as I get older, but before the internet, there was no internet. So what that means is if you wanted to go to a website and buy something online, there was no internet. So in 1996, I had done sales training for 6 years. I trained about 8,000 salespeople. I wrote 3 books when I was 20 and had an infomercial. So I had the 4th ever infomercial on television called Give Yourself Credit. Interesting story is people with bad credit. What we learned about people with bad credit is because they had bad credit, they couldn't pay. 70 million people with no credit meant no money, even though it was a big market. So it doesn't matter how big your market is if they can't pay. A little bit of a challenge. But I got out of financial services, and in 1996 I wrote a book, and what I wanted is I want somebody to build a website, process credit card orders, send me checks. I wanted to talk on stage and cash checks. And any of you that have been around long enough to know, there was no, people didn't have websites. E-commerce didn't exist. There weren't shopping carts. People printed out a form, called an 800 number, or did this thing called fax, and you would fax your order in. So I actually created a company, and we became the first master merchant in the world. I had to convince Visa. This is kind of when you talk about customer acquisition. I think I'll start here. In 96, the internet was never going to work. There's a show that I'm on with Jeff Bezos called TV.com in 1997, and half of the interview is people saying, I'll never put my credit card online, this will never work. And what we did is we looked around and said, hey, if I wanted to sell a book, I want somebody to process orders, send me a check, they could take a fee, I don't care, and I wanted to talk on stage. Technically, when you get approved for a Visa account, you have to go to Visa and say, I'm a restaurant, I'm selling food, here's my average transaction. If they happen to see you selling books out of Atlanta, or cigars out of Cuba, or basketball shoes for Michael Jordan, or leather goods out of Pakistan, it's a problem. It's called factoring. It was technically illegal. I didn't know that. I was 27 years old. I'm just selling crap. So I had to fly to Visa and convince a guy named Pete Gustafson, the head of Visa, to let us do internet e-commerce. And what I learned from 6.5 years of sales and psychology is what I want is not important. See, when we're going to customers, what I want is irrelevant. What you guys want when you go talk to somebody is absolutely irrelevant. What's important to them, that's the trick. And so before I went in, I actually did research, and I learned that one of their biggest businesses was 800 numbers. It was an $8 billion business of these companies that answered the phone, took credit card orders. I convinced Visa that I was a glorified 800 service. Because in my meeting said, the internet will never work, kid, we're going to shut you down, we don't get what you're doing. It's like, Mr. Gustafson, I'm basically an 800 service. You guys have 800 services, don't you? Of course. Well, you guys want to grow that business. Don't you want to grow your 800 business? Well, sure. I said, I'm like an 800 service. I don't touch product. I pull the orders off. I just process, pull a little fee, I do verifications. And he looked at it and said, I'll tell you what, well, give me a minute. He left, came back, he rewrote his agreement, made us a master merchant. So all of you guys that know PayPal, those guys are, we were PayPal. We built the rails and the infrastructure that became PayPal as the first master merchant in the world. So what I learned along the way is whenever you're doing customer acquisition, most of the companies I've done are really big corporate stuff. I don't like consumer stuff, it's too hard. So me personally, I like big companies. If you were gonna start a company and you're trying to get customers and you had the opportunity to talk to customers early, or talk to potential investors, or talk to potential advisors, what's the number one question you think you should ask somebody if you get a chance to talk to them?
Would you pay for this?
Would you pay for it? That's a good one, right? Will the dog eat the dog food? What else?
What's important for you?
What's important to you? That's my favorite Google. If you guys want a secret Google thing, if you're ever meeting with an executive, Google what's important to. I Google what's important to Oprah. What's important to Ryan Kavanaugh. What's important to Eric Schmidt. Be fascinated if you ever meet the guys, if you know what's important to them, it's a whole lot easier to talk to things that they're interested in than you are. All right, but that's a good one, but that's, in my opinion, not the most important one. Most important question, in my opinion, is why won't this work? Customer acquisition for me is not going out saying, hey, here's this great idea we built, look how wonderful it is, tell me if you want to. No, customer acquisition is, hey, why won't this work? What am I missing? Why won't you buy this? Why won't somebody say yes? Why will the government shut me down? If you don't solicit negative information, people are going to be afraid to tell you the truth. Oh, what do you think of this idea? Oh, yeah, it's great. In the back of their head, they're like, that'll never freaking work. You have to solicit negative information in a positive way. Right? If you're saying, hey, why won't this work? Tell me what I'm missing. You're enthusiastic about beating it up. That's the real feedback that you want. All right, so I'm going to give you guys an example, and then I'm going to teach you a couple of the techniques that I've developed through the years that will make customer acquisition a lot easier. You want an example of why won't this work? I'll give you an easy one. All right, years ago, we owned a company, I think it's still around, it may not be. We had a company, it's based in Austin, Texas now. Again, we're the only company in the world that can do this. When you make a phone call, you make a cell phone call, a voice call. You may not know it, there's 4 to 6 seconds of silence between when you make a call and when the phone rings. It's called a sequencing gap, a call setup. It's inventory. When you call somebody and the phone rings, that's the person you're calling. I was sitting around, this was in 2004 or 5, and I was a little irritated with Singular because I could make a free phone call, right? Mobile to mobile's free. But I didn't know which calls were free. My mind's always like, how stupid is this? You spend $30 million on advertising to tell me I can make a free call, but don't tell me which calls are free. Stupid. And I'm old enough to, see, this is another dated question, a few of you. How many of you have actually ever made a payphone call? Yeah. There was an old time when you made a payphone call, you'd hear this little message that says, thank you for using MCI. You may or may not remember. But it's basically a little message that connected on network. So I came up with this idea that I wanted to put an audio message in the gap of a phone call. You make a phone call, in that 4 seconds, hey, thank you for being a valued AT&T customer. This phone call sponsored by Diet Coke. Hey, Justin Bieber, want a free ringtone, press 1. I was like, wow, that's like a little ad snap. It's like a little segment of an ad. Brand new inventory, I did all the math. There's 36 billion calls a day when Google was doing 16 billion ads a month. So I found an inventory bigger than Google. And I did the math. We did a project. We were going to go to Verizon. Verizon had 440 million calls a day in network. Mobile to mobile, free. A bunch of people making calls don't know it's free. And we did the math. If you know advertising, it's called a CPM. Basically, we said, hey, if we could charge $3 for every 1,000 calls, at 440 million calls, wow, that's a $1.2, $1.3 billion business for a 4-second ad to tell somebody they're getting a free call. So I went to my buddy at McDonald's. Said, Brad, here's what I want to do. Why won't this work? Will you guys do it? He goes, great. Because I convinced him. I said, what's your biggest problem? He said, we want to sell salads. We want to be healthy. So what if I can give you a message that's only played between 11 and 12 o'clock when somebody makes a phone call. What's important to him? Wants to sell salads. Brilliant. $30 million investment, check. So follow me for the math and I'll show you why this is important. I have a $30 million commitment from McDonald's to play ads only between 11 and 12 o'clock. Guaranteed, unavoidable, instant. I have a meeting with the head of Verizon Advertising and Revenue, a guy named Adam Chu, if I remember. And I got access to a guy named Gary Schulten, who was head of East Coast Verizon. So I'm meeting with Gary before I'm going to meet with the guy at Verizon. And my number one question to Gary is, Gary, here's what I'm doing. 440 million calls, $3, 1.2 billion. I'm going to offer to split it with Verizon. Why won't this work? What am I missing? All right. What would you guys think he says? Right. I'm offering $600 or $700 million free revenue. Anybody want to guess what he says?
They could do it themselves.
No, because he's not an engineer and they couldn't. But that's a good answer. There's a lot of NIT not invented here kind of stuff, or NIH. No, what he said was fascinating. And if you guys want to write the numbers down, you can, but you don't have to. He looked at me and he said, all right, Stephen, did you do a focus group? I said, absolutely. J. Walter Thompson, Chicago, 337 people. That's what were your numbers? So we were at 95% acceptance. Right? If you guys all heard a message that just told you it was a free call, doesn't disrupt you, just said, this free call notification sponsored by Disney. This call sponsored by Diet Coke. But unavoidable, but just tells you can talk forever. And he looked at me and said the following. He goes, do you think that's good? And I'm thinking, there's a problem. I said, well, Gary, what am I missing? He said, here's the way my math works. He goes, I'm at Verizon. This was years ago because they were at 80 million subscribers. They're at about 130 now. He goes, I have 80 million subscribers in my network. He goes, you think your 95% is good. He goes, we play your little ad. 5% of the people are going to be pissed off. They're going to pick up their phone and dial 611 to call the call center because they think it's a free call. He goes, it's not. He goes, it cost me, Verizon, he goes, it cost me $15 a call. He goes, so 5% of 4 million is $60 million. He goes, out of that, half the people are pissed off, dog ate their homework, stepped in a puddle on the way to work, I don't know, I don't care. 2 million are going to be pissed off and drop out. 2 million at $50 a month is $100 million a month. For the year, you are $1 billion problem. You think I give a shit about advertising? Put your check away. Now think about that. I'm sitting there with a check from McDonald's, $1 billion. Like, that's what I wanted. Could care less. So what came out of that was interesting. I'm like, all right, Gary, if that's the problem, what do you guys care about? Customer retention. It costs us $400 to get a customer. Bill collection. Boy, if you could play a message just when they're making a call to tell them to pay their bill, God, you could. We had to flip the name. I had to create a new name called Cineplex, which doesn't mean anything because if I said ad snaps, people think you're selling ads and they're freaked out, they shut down. Like, customer acquisition is all about psychology, naming, getting to the right people. But if you get to people early, I'm a big proponent of take meetings early and often. Right? If you guys are building any kind of business, take meetings early. Get to your potential customer. Get to a potential board member. Get to a potential advisor. But take that meeting from a position of humility, not saying, look how great I am, look at all the things I'm doing. Look at it and say, here's what I'm doing. Why won't this work? What would it take to one day do business with a company like yours? You know, what would I have to do? What if you were in my position trying to build this company? What are the 2 or 3 things you would suggest I do next? See, I need a lot of people that are like, well, we're not going to talk to customers till we're ready. Great, but by the time you're ready and you talk to them, they may not want what you think they want. So get to them early. Take meetings early. Go in though and ask questions. Ask a lot of questions. All right? Now the way that I get there, this is the topic that I normally give. We're going to try and find a way to jump in the middle here. When I say isolation is a good thing, if I say isolation, what does that word mean to you? Somebody tell me what isolation means.
By yourself.
By yourself. lonely, isolated, set off. Normally, I trick you guys and I put a slide up here that's got this really dark gray guy all hunched in a corner, and it's dark and it's drab, and that's what we think of for isolation. And then I say, here's how instantly you can reframe your mind, your psychology, or your customer. And the next slide that pops up is this beautiful beach and a girl sitting there all by herself looking at a sunset, and it says, isolation is a good thing. Now the point of that is, if you pay attention to the psychology of yourself and go, wow, what do I feel like when I think of isolation as dark or when I think of a sunset? You can change just the perception of the way you feel. That's the same thing with your customers, right? The visuals of what you show your customers are important. And so often we do stuff in our head thinking, oh, this is what's important, right? I've got a million examples of these. I was with somebody the other day, and they're building this kind of cool music platform. And we talked about wording. I was like, oh, do you have a demo? She goes, yeah, I've got all kinds of demos. I was just, Huntington Library, we did 4 demos. I'm like, great, let me see it. Can I sign in? Do I log in? She goes, oh no, well, we've got music demos. Like, well, I wanted a tech demo. So when you say words, the customers don't always know, it's in your head, right? So I'm going to teach you guys as best I can with no slides. And I've got thousands of these online, you guys can go back. But trick question, I always warn you if there's a trick question. Here's the only trick question. Usually the people that answer it know it's a trick question, they still answer and they get it wrong twice. So not often you can ask one question, get one answer and get it wrong twice. But here we go. This is not the trick question. This is get everybody involved. How many of you have ever seen a tornado? Great. What's the most powerful part of a tornado? Anybody want to guess? Go ahead.
Center.
The center, the eye, right? What's your name?
Nathan.
Nathan, thank you for participating. Here's the deal. Number 1, tornadoes don't have eyes, hurricanes do. So there is no center of a tornado, so I apologize, you're wrong. Number 2, the eye in the center is the calmest part of the hurricane, so you just got that question wrong twice. But I appreciate your effort.
I made suicide.
No. We're going to fix it. So here's the reason I use tornadoes kind of fascinating. If a tornado, when it spins around, I grew up in Oklahoma and Texas, I can throw my accent on, but until that thing touches the ground, the little tiny funnel that touches the ground is what causes all the destruction. So the goal is, how can we be powerful? Well, to be powerful, you have to sequence down. Right? And what I mean by this is when you're talking to somebody, when you're trying to get customers, number 1, what you do is irrelevant to what you need. What you do is irrelevant. What you need is important. All right? And I'm going to pick on somebody. This is a harder question. How many of you have a business that is enterprise related, corporate related, entertainment related, celebrity related? Nothing? Somebody? Yeah, go ahead.
Mine's weddings. It's like a little entertainment.
Could be. That one's a little harder, but I can do that one. What's yours?
VR.
Who's your customers?
All kinds of companies that are startups or like existing smaller companies which want to advertise.
Who are the top 5 companies?
Advertise. We did one experience for Walmart.
Walmart's a pretty big startup, so I'm already confused.
For me, it's tough, but
Yeah. Okay. Here's my point, guys. I'm going to try and do this. So, tornado technique works like this. At the top, there's an emotional value of what you do. There's something cool about what you do. You want to get people to say, "Wow, that's cool," without explaining. Oh, did you say something? Oh, sorry. You want the emotional value is something cool about what you do. So I could go around and ask every one of you. You're going to explain to me what you do, and I'm going to try and understand it. And we're going to spend all this time. Doesn't matter. What's emotional? Within emotion, what's the industries you go after? It's not that you can't go after every industry, but in every business, there's 2 or 3 industries that you should be the strongest in. You know, even if it's startups, there's certain industries within the startup space. If it's entertainment, entertainment is a broad field. Certain kind of entertainers. But what are the industries? Within the industry, what are the 3 to 5 companies? Within the company, what's the title of the person that you sell to? And what specifically are the name of the top 3 to 5 people you want to meet right now? All right, so emotional value, industry, company by name, title, and 3 to 5 people by name. So I'm going to show you guys how this works. I'll let you guys finish writing, and then I'll show you how simple this is if you get it down. It's simple when I do it because I've done it for years, but every time we start a new company, this is a process. All right, you guys ready?
Yes.
All this stuff is online, so I can get on to you. So over here, I'm going to explain to this side of the room a company we have called RonaStar. I want y'all to pay attention. I want you to help me. We're networking. So here we go. RonaStar. We're an ASP and an SAS. We're a proprietary platform redeploying assets as an enterprise over an FA module. We're an ERP initiative, but we really fit into the cost avoidance of the Sarbanes-Oxley component for companies that do integration, not implementation. And we're really big in areas that basically like to redeploy things across assets. No? All right, hang on. Let me tell you more. Right? So I could sit and explain to you all day long what RonaStar is and how great, and at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, because even if you leave, all you're leaving is thinking either A, that was kind of cool, or B, what the hell was he talking about? Because what I do is irrelevant. So, this side of the room, I'm going to explain RonaStar to you using this psychological technique. You guys can play along. It's pretty simple. All right. What is RonaStar? Really simple. We help really big companies save a lot of money. Companies are trying to save money. We help them save money. We work primarily in industries like automotive, manufacturing, government, public schools. Within there, the companies we're going after, we're really trying to get access to are United Airlines, Los Angeles Public School System, the state of California, Disney. But within those really big companies, we really just talk to the CFO. So if you know any CFOs of big companies, I'd love to talk to them. And right now I want to meet. And if I was actually doing this, I would know the CFO of Disney. I would know the CFO of Los Angeles. I would know the CFO of Chicago Public Schools. I would know the names of the people I want to meet. Right? Customer acquisition for me is not this group understanding RonaStar. All I need you to understand is watch how easy this is. It's imprinted forever. What does RonaStar do? I help companies. And what am I trying to find? Everything else is irrelevant. Like, how do we do it? What's our technology? It doesn't freaking matter, because I don't sell software. I talk to CFOs. Those are my customers. My customer acquisition is, here's who I need to get to. How can you help me get there? So when I was asking most people when I do this, they don't know who their top 5 customers are. Like, oh, if I'm standing up here with a magic wand, who are the top 5 companies that'll change your business? Oh, well, I don't know. I'm like, great. You want me to help you? If you don't know your customer, how am I supposed to? Who do you sell to in there? Oh, I don't know. I need to do business with Disney. Disney has 87,000 employees. Who? Well, Disney. I'm like, no, everybody in Disney kind of knows what they're doing. You need to pick somebody that might understand what you're doing. Right? I have friends in the entertainment, so they're like, I want to be represented by CAA. Is CAA still over here? I think they might. I want CAA. I'm like, who? Well, I want an agent. Who? They have 1,500 agents, so every agent's very specialized. I'm not going to send you to Mark Von Arts, who does movies, if you want television, which is David Tinzer. If you don't know who you want, it's not my job to figure your business out. Not my job to figure your customer out. Right? So when I talk about this as a visual, Nathan, again, thank you for participating. Customer acquisition to me is, who's my customer and how do I get to them? Right? And I want to be able to figure that out. So for us, every time we start a new business, like we're doing one now, Meade, you guys familiar with blockchain, like internet stuff? Mm-hmm. We just won. I don't know if you know that, Janine. We won the global ICO competition in Silicon Valley with hundreds of, like 32, yeah. So it's been insane.
What does it mean, one?
What's what? Oh, thank you for a very specific question. There were 400 companies that applied to present. It was the world's largest ICO contest. They selected 32. We all had 7 to 10 minutes on stage, panel of 10 judges. And Meade Pro, the company I created, we took the first prize out of all 32 companies.
The most viable business.
Well, I don't know if it's the most viable, it was whatever their criteria was, we won. Potentially, I mean, what we're building is a big global, it's a platform for global trade. It's corporate barter, $17 trillion industry, never been automated. You know, but kind of the same thing, my customers for this global trade platform aren't those of us that are in the room. It's the head of corporate trade at Caterpillar. It's the head of supply chain at Ford. It's Tom Kozak, who ran loyalty at Marriott. It's Jay Litt, who runs Wyndham's procurement. You know, my customer is the guys in these really big companies. And the goal for customer acquisition is, how can I get introduced to those people, and how can I go to them and say, here's what I'm building, why won't this work? What will you do differently? What can I do? You know, so when we build a company, this tornado technique, I use it for customer acquisition, like, who's my core customer? Right? Meade Pro is a global platform. Could we do everything? Yeah, we can do the grocery store on the corner. We can do somebody selling tires in Des Moines. We could do a guy doing pine nuts out of Russia. We could. I'd rather get Caterpillar that does $4 billion a year, or GE that does $250 billion a year. Right? So when I talk about customers, it's where are you potentially the most successful? Where can you focus down? Where can you say, here's my best industries. Here are my best companies. And what you want to happen is what I call a parallel introduction, or horizontal. Horizontal, if I say, hey, we're doing airlines and we're doing United and we want CFOs, somebody's going to go, United, oh, I know somebody at JetBlue, or I know somebody at Southwest, or I know somebody at American. Same thing in entertainment. We did a bunch of stuff with entertainment. I don't want entertainers. We had an entertainment platform, people were like, oh, well, you know, can you do anybody in entertainment? Yeah, Magmo helps everybody, but no, for us, our focus was musicians with more than 1 million followers. That at least got me in a market. And within there, we segmented down, we did research of the top 100 Facebook fan pages, ranked all 52, 7 of the top 10 were musicians, 16 of the top 20, 52 of the top 100, and I said, here's who I want. So my list was, could we build a platform, could any musician in the world use it? Yeah, absolutely. My target customer is Jay-Z, who we want using it once a day to 52 million people. So how do we get to Jay-Z? We went to Ticketmaster, who wants Jay-Z to sell more tickets, and we showed Ticketmaster how they could make money using our technology if they introduced us, because they both want to make money. We didn't go to them and say, hey, we've got a cool platform. We're like, hey, here's something that can help you sell more tickets. Right? So this aspect of what's in it for you, but the tornado technique is interesting. When you're doing a startup, you're going to need advisors, you're going to need investors, you're going to need management, you're going to need talent, you're going to need customers. So customer acquisition to me is across that broad range. You know, people come to me a lot and say, oh, well, you know, we're looking for money, we need investors. I'm like, great, who? Well, VCs. Who? Like, VCs specialize. Right? I'm not going to send you to John at Nokia, who only does mobile, if you're doing enterprise software. That might be Mike Malone. Double M only does enterprise. You said, like, these guys are specialized. So your job for customers is find out who your best customer is. If you're trying to raise venture, if you're trying to raise angel money, do the research. You know, find the guys that were angels in your industry. Find the companies that have people that cashed out that you may want. Right? If I was doing enterprise software around here, I would go after the guys, you know, down the street in Manhattan. Largest public company in LA, freaking Adams Company. What's the largest public company? Cornerstone. Cornerstone Software. Cornerstone's there, Karch guy that did Ariba. You know, I know my customers. I know by name because I've done the research. So to me, customer acquisition is a lot of front-end work of saying, here's who I want, here's who I'm trying to get to. And the structure of the tornado technique does two things. A, it helps give you a framework to try and sequence down. As an entrepreneur, you need to be focused. The definition for me, isolation is a good thing. It has nothing to do with being alone. It's about being focused and targeted to get exactly what you want. How am I going to be successful? I want those 5 guys. I want those 5 companies. Can I do 500? Sure, I could, but boy, if you could help me get those 5, that's what I want. All right, so how do we reverse engineer things? We go into the market saying, who's our customer? And so my point back where I started, you know, if you're building something, you can still go to these guys early. Say, here's what I'm doing, why won't this work? So don't be afraid to take meetings early, because when you use this kind of technique, people will give you referrals. People will want to help you. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
All right. I'm going to invert this just to save you guys time. Right? A lot of this is in a totally different speech, but it's relevant and helpful. Because you're going to do a lot of networking. Would you guys agree? You're going to end up talking to people. You're going to end up name tagging. Oh, Carlos, who are you? What do you do? What do you do? What do you do? All right? So what we're going to learn real quick is don't ever answer what you do first. Try not to ever, ever, ever answer what you do first. Right? And what I mean by that is that Carlos, play along with me, right? So I've got my name tag on, which I don't. It says Steven, Big Bamboo. We need a networking event. Carlos looks at me, reads my name tag. What's the first question Carlos asks me? Hey, Steven.
What do you do?
What do you do? Well, boy, let me tell you, people jump in, right? What you don't want to do is don't do it this way. Ask me again.
What do you do?
What do you do? Yeah, that's called combat. See, the mind wants you to answer. So we have to trick the mind because his mind's spongy. He thinks we're going to be talking and we're both selling to each other because we're networking. So I'm going to trick him into answering without answering. Try it again, Carlos, please.
Steven, what do you do?
We run a technology incubator called Big Bamboo. But anyway, hey, tell me more about your company. What is X? So what I just did is I answered his question without answering. I shifted back where I am now in control of that conversation. And because we're at a networking event, it's a natural concurrence that he's going to want to talk as well. But the problem with Carlos talking is he's going to tell me what he does and I don't care. I don't have time to figure it out. At the end, even if I do know what he does, I can't help him because he's not going to tell me what he needs. So all I'm going to do is politely, as best I can, reverse the tornado technique when I'm talking to somebody. Carlos is going to go, oh, I do this, and I'll be like, oh, Carlos, that's cool. Hey, like, what do your customers love about you? Right, with the things you do, like, what do they love most? What's the coolest thing about what you do? I want to find out what the emotional component is. And I'll say, all right, what are your 3 industries, right? If you're a startup, if you're a growing business, what are the 3 industries you're best in? You know, where are you trying to go? What's your wish list? Who are the top 5 companies you want to get to? Do you have a wish? I'm going to ask them the questions to sequence through to get to the people they don't know how to give me, because I can't help them if they don't give me something. And I don't have time to figure out everybody's businesses. I don't care. But I do care that I can help you, and the only way I can help you is figure out what you need. So this situation works both ways, right? So customer acquisition on one side is that. The other side to me of customer acquisition is what I call, well, technically this is called psychological jiu-jitsu, but let's not call it that. I call it curried favors. And what I mean by that is I make a lot of introductions, I do a lot of networking events, I help a lot of people with introductions because I know what people are looking for because I've asked these questions. What does that do for me when I need something, if I need access to somebody, if I need help, if I need a meeting? It's much easier for customer acquisition because I built this relationship capital of knowing how to help other people. Right? So as you do this, all of these things kind of stack on top of each other as an entrepreneur. It can be tough, it can be lonely, it can be challenging. Yeah, it can be fun, it can be exciting. It's a cool, brave world out there. But if your mentality is, how do I add value, how do I help other people, and then get them to help me, things get a lot easier. Right? And one of the aspects of helping other people is trying to figure out what's in it for you, what's in it for me. Right, so I don't know how I'm on time. I've got one more. I don't, yeah, because I've never done, you know me, I'm normally timed with slides, so I don't know what I'm doing. Okay. So I'll give you guys you want another tip? Like these are all like little gems. What's in it for you means if I meet somebody, is that Meade?
Yeah.
Meade, cool. If I meet Meade, if my mentality is, what's in it for Meade, how can I help him? And I'm asking him these questions, oh, what do you do? I'm really trying to figure out what he does, trying to help him, maybe come up with a couple names. When I'm done, if I tell Monty what I do after I've asked him a bunch of questions, I can position my answer a whole lot better. Do you guys agree? I do this all the time with entertainers. They're slashers. You guys know what slasher is in LA? I'm a writer, producer, director.
Oh, yeah.
I do this. I've got a real estate card, but that's in my other pocket. Like, pick one.
That's hilarious.
Right? They're slashers. Like, I'm a slasher. And they're throwing everything out. And I'm like, well, you don't do anything because you do everything. Like, if you knew what the person you were talking to did, you might position what you do a little differently. If you're talking to a guy who happens to be a music AR, you might position what you do a little more music related. If you're talking to a guy who happened to have won an Oscar and you didn't know, but hey, you're talking to him because you asked questions, you can position, so you can be, I'm not telling people, the entertainers freak out, they're like, well, you just want me to pick one thing. I'm like, no. I want you to pick one thing when you're talking to one person, but pick the one thing that's important to that one person you're talking to.
Yeah.
But you can only figure that out if you talk to them, ask questions. All right, so I'm going to give another example. This mentality of what's in it for you, what's in it for me, translates down to everything, including, in my opinion, the way you write emails and the way you communicate. And I'll give you an example. We did this years ago, and I still do it because we do so much networking events. I'm like all over the place. But years ago, we were doing an entertainment platform, a different one. Basically, there was a time, again, back in the day, where there were all these fake profiles on the internet. There was fake Twitter before Twitter verified. And you could go type a celebrity's name in, and there'd be 40 pages that came up. You know, we did, it was hilarious. We did a meeting with CA. They're like, oh, we have Eva Longoria. I'm like, which one? Well, Eva Longoria. I'm like, which one? Well, Eva, I said, fine. Pull up Eva on your screen. There's 9 guys in the room. They pull up on the screen, and there's 14 Eva Longoria pages. They didn't know which one was theirs. Right? So basically, we were trying to create this platform that was just basically verified entertainment. It was, you know, if you went there, you know it was the authentic celebrity. That was it. And we really needed a CEO because I didn't have a background in entertainment, and we really wanted a guy, and I used to not tell his name, but now I'll talk about it. There was a guy named Steve McPherson. And McPherson was president of ABC. He's one of the big guys. He created Dancing with the Stars and Lost and Desperate Housewives. And I mean, seems like people in entertainment are afraid of Mr. McPherson. This is a big dude. He'd run into a little bit of trouble at Disney and had to leave, and I wanted him to come work for us. I'm like, I want him as CEO. What could I get him? I don't know the guy. So I had a friend of mine who was working with me. Here's the point of the story. My friend's name is John Pattison. I throw him under the bus all the time, and he knows it. So I said, John, write the email to get us a meeting with Mr. McPherson. And the reason is John has won 4 Emmys. He created electronic press kits. He created the Celebrity Swan and the Dr. Phil show. I mean, John's done a bunch. So what did he put in the email? All the shit that John's done. So his email was, Dear Mr. McPherson, my name's John Pattison, and I created electronic press kits, and I did 400 movies, and I worked with Kevin at Waterworld, and this guy here, and that guy there, and I helped the Dr. Phil. It was 3.5 paragraphs of dribble of, look at me, John Pattison, please meet with me because I'm important. That's what a lot of us do. We write the email saying, I did this, I did that, I did this, I did that. I looked at the email, and I had just read an article out of Hollywood Reporter. Hollywood Reporter interviewed Mr. McPherson, getting back to my little tip, what's important too, because I had learned this early on. And in the article, he talked about the embarrassment of ABC, how he was, you know, afraid of what his daughters would think, and he really wanted to find a company that he could be proud of and leave a legacy for his daughters. That's all he cared about. That's the whole article was Mr. McPherson being embarrassed, wanting to leave a legacy for his daughters. So I rewrote the email, and I still have it on my slides. And basically it was like this. Dear Mr. McPherson, you were recently featured in Hollywood Reporter. You mentioned you'd like to leave a legacy for your daughters. You and I haven't met, but I have something that might be able to help you accomplish your goals. Love to meet for coffee. It's like 4 sentences. But I use you in there, if I remember, 7 times if I counted. You and I have never met. You were featured. You want to leave a legacy. I might have something that helps you accomplish your goals. Had nothing to do with me. If he came to work, my company might have helped him. That was my goal. But the whole email, 17 minutes later, get an email from Mr. McPherson. These guys don't spend much time. Great, love to meet when? That was it. Had coffee with him. To this day, we're friends. We've helped him launch. He's got a moonshine company because he wanted to get in moonshine. He wanted to do wine. And we like helped him so many. Never came to work with us, but I have a great relationship with the former president of ABC. I've helped him launch 3 companies. Had nothing to do with that. The point is, when you write these emails, you know, especially after networking events. I just returned. I'm so fortunate. I returned from Davos. It's really like World Economic Forum and St. Moritz, and it was like rock star stuff. But in my email, I don't say I met you. It says you and I met here. You mentioned this. You talked about this while we were speaking. You know, your conversation with me was enlightening because you mentioned these things. I'm phrasing the whole conversation point back around that person. Where so many times, and I've seen it, is I met you here. This is, you know. So just put it in the other way, because the underlying psychology is if you start a question with I versus you, the minute you started with you, the synapses for that person fall, you know, fire. I'm working on 2 hours sleep, 5:30 to 7:30. Fires off quicker. There we go. Fires off. That was what I was trying to think of. You know. So think about this stuff a little bit differently. Yeah.
So when you go in that you route, how do you make sure you're not stepping on any risky, you know, items that may not go well with the other person?
Well,
Like he might have not liked the article at all at the end of the day, or what, you know.
maybe, but in the article, they quoted him, and if you read it, you could read that he was embarrassed from what had happened. And I would have rather taken a shot about something for him and his daughter, because that's what he was quoted as saying, you know, than to take a risk somewhere else. And that's why I said, Google what's important too. Like the last time we did this, again, we didn't get the deal done luckily, but I did it with, years ago, we're doing with Ryan Kavanaugh. Like what's important to Ryan Kavanaugh? And it was Chinese investors to save his company. Like all he talks about in all of the panels was, oh, we're Chinese and we're doing, and that's what he needed because his company went bankrupt because he couldn't get enough investors. So, you know, but I could have gone in and pitched him some entertainment. He could care less. He's trying to save his company.
Right.
So we actually went in with a $3 billion fund interested in entertainment that we could introduce him to. You know, so it's a risk, but I'd rather take the risk doing what's important to you. You know, and starting the emails with you. You and I haven't met. You and I, you know, we're introduced to this person. You and I met at this event. You mentioned these items. It just it reframes a different thing. And again, a lot of this, like I said, this to me, it's like customer acquisition is so much about communication. It's about presentation. It's about introductions and trying to get to the right people. But it's about identifying the right people. And that's your responsibility. It's not anybody else's. For somebody to figure out who you need. Oh, I do e-commerce. I'm like, great, I'm a doctor. Right? Are doctors specialized? Right? If you're sick, you're going to go research and find the best doctor. Treat your business the same way. It's the same thing. You can't be broad. You want to be specific. The more specific you are, the more people can help you because they understand what you do. That's the whole thing. Customer acquisition is about identifying people, figuring out what's important to them, and how you fit in to solve their problem. All right, I'm going to give you one last example, and this isn't for you guys, this is a student one, but I like telling this story, and I still have that one. A kid come up to me, because I teach a lot at the colleges. I like the public speaking side, even though I'm a little short-circuited today. Kid come up to me afterwards and said, oh, you know, here's my cover letter. Will you review my cover letter? I'm going to get a job. And I was like, I don't read resumes. Like we've hired hundreds of people. I don't read resumes. People are referred to me. I know their background. We do interviews. I just don't read resumes. Please, please, please read my cover letter. I've never read a cover letter. Please, I said, all right, I'll tell you what. Here's the deal. I promise I will read it. As long as you promise that you don't cry if I'm honest with you. Because I'm not nice. And I don't mean it in a bad way. I'm like Simon Cowell on the panels. But I want people to be successful. So he gave me his cover letter and I looked at it. And it was going to a financial services company. And he said, I'd love to come to work and I would learn this and I would learn that and I would do this and I can learn how to use spread. It was 2.5 paragraphs of all the things he was going to learn. And I looked at the poor kid. I gave him his cover letter and said, I would never hire you. well, what do you mean? I said, why? If I'm that executive, I'm worried about my bonus, getting home to my kids, which I don't have kids, but getting home to my kids, my boss not coming in. I'm hiring you to fix all the problems in my life, not for you to come learn all the shit you want to learn. Like, not my job for you to come learn Excel spreadsheet on my dime. I got a bonus riding on you taking care of me. And so that's what I told him. I said, you need to look at it. I said, I would go research. What's the corporate mandate? What's important to the CEO? Right? If you know who the guy that's interviewing you, go research, see if he's out there. And your cover letter should be, here's all the things I can do for you. You know, I see in your company your goal is to do X this year. I could be part of that on your team. Right? If your mandate is this, I read that you're supposed to grow revenues by 30% this year. I think I could be a contributor in your team to help you accomplish that goal. You'll learn all the crap when you get there. It's just how you rephrase things. You still want to get in. But that person cares about themselves first. So help them figure out how to help themselves. Your customers are all about themselves. Not in a bad way. Just think about that. Just remember that going in and figure out how to help them. So I'm going to stop there. Thanks.
Any questions for Stephen? There must be some.
Okay.
Okay.
If you're targeting smaller companies where there's, trying to think of the universe of, if you're going for giant enterprises, that's 3 to 5 is probably easier to find. Smaller companies, but you are going to be looking for a volume play?
No, same thing. Yeah, because we did a bunch of stuff with small businesses.
Yeah.
And we went to NABO, which has 10.1 million women business owners, where the average woman has less than 12 employees, and they all wanted to sing Kumbaya and help each other. We went to NABO. When we were doing stuff, we looked at some of the stuff in weddings, wherever the weddings were, and we went to Veronica Katz, who ran David's Bridal, and we went, oh, here, we're the influencers. It's not the wedding people. Like, marketing to wedding people takes too long. You know, who's running David's Bridal? Who's running where are your points of referral? You know, so NABO had 10 million business owners, the Small Business Chamber, Chambers of Commerce. To me, things are all about points of influence. You know, where's the point of influence to get to all the customers that I want? Does that make sense? Okay. Yeah, Carlos.
So your recommendation is to seek out people that can give you a warm intro to these people, or because cold email or cold messages.
I don't do cold messages. I don't do cold calls. I don't use LinkedIn for.
Right.
I do research of who I want, and then I figure out ways to ask my friends. You know, how to get to them.
It sounds like you have very connected friends.
But and to that point, I do. I don't want to be smug about it. I've worked very hard though, but I'm fortunate. I play at a very interesting level, and I've been doing it long enough. I know how to connect the dots. You know, but same thing. LinkedIn's great to use for, not to how to get to the people, but who you're connected through to figure out. So you can still, but even if I was going to do a cold email, I would still phrase the email in the premise of that other person. I must get, I don't know about you guys, I get 90 to 100 email a day on LinkedIn of people going, I hate to bother you, but I have this, and I sell this IT service, and I can do this for you, and I can do that, and I can do that. And I'm like, okay, what, all they're doing is selling themselves. Even if one guy said, you were not to be overly true, you recently won D10E, you're probably going to be growing your company. I have something that might be able to help you on the growth side. I'd at least be like, well, crap, the guy at least did some research.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So anything, even if it's cold, if it's a little bit personal, it'll at least cut through the clutter. Okay. Anything else? One more, and then we'll jump out. Yeah.
Do you have any special strategy for the marketplace and the problem of egg and chicken problems in customer acquisition? The places that you need you have a double-side market, and you have to get traction. Is there any strategy, a general strategy about this?
No. So the buyer-seller vortex, chicken egg, all of that's hard. I'm much more a proponent of more sellers than buyers initially, because sellers are looking for multiple options. buyers are looking for a solution to buy something. Right? So we've done a couple marketplaces. We usually focus on sellers, because if the sellers if you're doing a marketplace, it's just a different outlet for them. You're not the only one, but you're another channel for a seller.
Mhm.
So if I were to focus, I would focus on sellers, so when the buyers comes in, there's inventory.
Yeah.
Right? Because the buyer comes in a market, there's nothing there, they never come back. If the seller doesn't sell something, not a big deal. Hopefully they've got 9 other channels they're selling. You know, yours might be better, yours might be unique, but you know, to me, it's the businesses, and then who are the points of influence or centers of influence within a business that I can try develop a relationship with to bring everybody in. You know, so yeah, we do a lot of, I mean, we've done Chamber of Commerce, we do a lot of big networking stuff though. Milken and Davo, these things, just because it's, for my world, it's a point of access. But when we're jacking around with entertainment, we're having to do, you know, Oscar parties and pre-event gift bag, like it's just stupid stuff. You go where the customers are. But I'm a big proponent of networking events. Like the conferences, if you do them right, collapse timeframes, can meet a lot of people. Anytime I do a conference, or if I'm going to one, I send emails to my 4,000 or 5,000 people. Say, who do you know on the panel? Who do you know that's going? Who can you introduce me to? Here's a list of speakers. If you know anybody, I'd love to meet them. You know, so I end up in these really, fortunately, amazing events, but then it's my friends who are referring me, people that are going or on the panels, and then, you know, I've got new relationships through my referrals of my friends saying, oh, this guy's on the panel, you should meet him. You know, so it's just creative, but it's focused. So, okay, sorry, one more.
Yeah, so for the wedding business,
And I'll answer quick.
do you prefer going to like bridal shows or direct?
Me, I hate
shows to
weddings, they scare me,
businesses?
so I don't go. No, we were actually doing, we were doing an online magazine, and the weddings we thought were a big component of it. And so we looked at David's Bridal and some other things as a referral source, so I don't,
Yeah, I've been looking at talking to vendors like.
yeah, that was why we did. So anyway, anybody that wants my information, Janine has it, my